The harsh ring of a phone cut through the darkness at 3 a.m. Marjorie's hand trembled as she fumbled for the light switch, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Mrs. Peterson? This is Michael Daniels from the U.S. Embassy in Lagos, Nigeria." The voice on the other end was grave, professional. Time seemed to stop as Marjorie clutched the receiver. "I regret to inform you that we have your sister listed as an assault victim. She's currently in medical care, but her condition is serious." Marjorie's knees buckled. Her sister, who had flown to Nigeria just 3 days ago, beaming with excitement to meet the man she'd fallen in love with online. 72 hours earlier. "Are you sure about this, Marge?" The concern in her neighbor's eyes went unheeded as Marjorie wheeled her suitcase toward the departure gate. At 57, she stood tall, her silver-streaked hair freshly styled, wearing a new blouse she'd purchased specially for this moment. "Viktor and I have been talking for 8 months, she said, her voice steady with conviction. "Sometimes you have to take a chance on happiness." The boarding call echoed through the terminal as Marjorie stepped toward a journey that would forever alter her life. Before we continue this harrowing true story, take a moment to subscribe to the Crime Insider. Hit that notification bell. It might just save someone you care about from becoming the next victim of an online predator. Every like and subscription helps us reach people who need these warnings most. Did you know that romance scams targeting people over 50 resulted in losses exceeding $184 million last year alone? Behind each dollar is a person whose trust was betrayed, whose hope was weaponized against them. Have you ever felt so lonely that a stranger's kind words felt like a lifeline? Have you watched someone you care about fall under the spell of a person they've never met? When does hope blind us to danger? For Marjorie, a widow from a quiet Midwestern town, that loneliness created the perfect vulnerability. The isolation following her husband's death had carved a void that Viktor seemed custom-designed to fill. What makes intelligent, capable adults ignore warning signs when romance is involved? And how quickly can a dream vacation transform into a fight for survival? The town of Cedar Grove barely registered on most maps, 5,000 residents, 3 traffic lights, and a main street where shopkeepers still greeted customers by name. For 32 years, Marjorie and Robert Peterson had built their life here, comfortable in its predictable rhythms and familiar faces. Then came the heart attack. Sudden, devastating, final. At 57, Marjorie found herself alone in the 3-bedroom colonial they'd purchased when Robert's accounting firm had first taken off. The house, once filled with weekend dinner parties and holiday gatherings, now echoed with silence. Her mornings began at 6 a.m., a habit from decades of preparing Robert's breakfast before he left for work. Coffee brewed for 2, though she'd pour only 1 cup. The local paper, delivered faithfully each day, open to the crossword puzzle they once solved together. By 8 a.m., she'd be at her desk in the back office of Jennings Real Estate, where she'd worked as an administrative assistant for 15 years. Her colleagues were kind but distant, most 20 years her junior, with lives revolving around young children and weekend adventures. "You should come to book club," her coworker Diane would occasionally suggest. But sitting in a circle discussing romance novels while others exchanged knowing glances about their husbands felt like rubbing salt in a wound. Evenings stretched endlessly. Dinner for 1, prepared meticulously from recipes sized for 2. News programs filled the background silence until 9 p.m., when she'd call her sister Beth, their conversations growing shorter as Beth's life filled with grandchildren and retirement travel plans. The loneliness wasn't just an absence of people. Cedar Grove had plenty of those. It was the absence of touch. No shoulder squeezes while passing in the hallway. No hand to hold during evening walks. No one who cared if she made it home safely. "You should get a cat," suggested her neighbor. "Or join that new church group for seniors." But Marjorie didn't want substitutes. She wanted connection. The laptop had been Robert's. She'd kept it more from habit than need, rarely using it beyond occasional emails to distant relatives. But one Tuesday evening, after a particularly quiet day where she'd spoken only 12 words aloud, counting her order at the pharmacy, Marjorie typed 3 words into the search bar: dating after widowed. The algorithms responded instantly. Dating sites for mature adults. Success stories with smiling couples in their 60s. Testimonials promising renewed purpose and companionship. With trembling fingers, Marjorie uploaded a photo, recent, unfiltered, and crafted a profile that felt both honest and hopeful. What would you do in her position? Would you risk vulnerability for the chance to feel alive again? Would you recognize the difference between healthy hope and desperate longing? For Marjorie, that first click launched her toward a collision course with someone who specialized in turning loneliness into leverage. The notification arrived on a Tuesday evening. Viktor has sent you a message. Marjorie's cursor hovered over the alert. His profile photo showed a distinguished gentleman with silver temples and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. According to his biography, Viktor Andre was a 62-year-old American-educated civil engineer currently working on infrastructure projects in West Africa. A widower himself, he described loving classical music, historical novels, and long walks at sunset. I noticed you enjoy gardening, his first message read. My late wife grew the most beautiful hydrangeas. What do you like to grow? Such a simple question, yet it opened the floodgates. Marjorie found herself writing paragraphs about her prized tomatoes, her struggles with clay soil, the peace she found while tending her flower beds. Viktor responded with thoughtful questions and gentle encouragement. Unlike the handful of other men who'd messaged her with generic compliments or immediate requests to meet, Viktor seemed patient, interested in knowing her mind before her schedule. I lost my Eliza to cancer 5 years ago, he shared during their third week of correspondence. The loneliness nearly destroyed me until I found purpose in my work. These infrastructure projects bring clean water to communities that desperately need it. His messages arrived with clockwork regularity, never during work hours, always just after dinner when Marjorie felt most alone. He shared photos of Nigerian marketplaces, colorful fabric vendors, and children playing near freshly constructed wells. I've built bridges across continents, he wrote, but find myself unable to bridge the gap in my own heart. Marjorie printed his messages, reading them before bed. After decades of Robert's practical communication style, Viktor's poetic expressions felt intoxicating. When he mentioned his contract ending in 2 months, Marjorie's heart raced. I've saved enough to retire comfortably, he told her. But I can't bear returning to an empty home in Boston. Their evening calls began in month 3. His voice, deep with a barely perceptible accent he attributed to his Hungarian mother, made her feel seen in ways she hadn't experienced since Robert's death. You understand me, he would say. Most women wouldn't appreciate a man who values depth over appearance. When her sister questioned the relationship, have you video chatted with him? Marjorie defended Viktor's explanations about poor internet connections in remote work locations. When her bank manager raised eyebrows at her request for international transfer information, just in case, she'd explained, Marjorie felt embarrassed by others' assumptions. People don't believe in romance anymore, Viktor consoled her. They've forgotten what it means to connect with someone's soul. I want to see your face in person, not through pixels, Viktor's message glowed on Marjorie's screen. My contract finishes next month. Why wait until I return to America? Nigeria is beautiful in spring. The suggestion sent a flutter through Marjorie's chest. Travel to Africa? At her age? It seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. I have a lovely guest house on the company compound, Viktor continued. Complete privacy, full security. I could show you the real Nigeria, not the tourist version. When Marjorie mentioned the idea to her weekly lunch group, the reaction was immediate and unified. You can't be serious, Beth's voice rose over the restaurant chatter. Meeting a man you've never seen in person? In Nigeria? He's not some random person, Marjorie defended. We've been talking for months. Have you even looked up the travel advisories? Asked Diane, her eyes wide with concern. Or checked his credentials? Marjorie nodded, though she hadn't done either. The travel advisory website had seemed complicated, and searching for Viktor's engineering credentials felt like a betrayal of trust. At home that evening, she opened her laptop to research Nigerian customs. Instead, she found herself browsing lightweight summer dresses and comfortable walking sandals. Within days, shopping packages arrived, New luggage, a sun hat, mosquito repellent. I've arranged everything, Viktor assured her. My driver will meet you at the airport. Bring minimal cash. Nigeria operates largely on electronic payments, and I'll handle all expenses. Her neighbor Mark, a former military officer, stopped by as she packed. At least register with the embassy, he urged, leaning against her doorframe. And keep a copy of your passport somewhere separate from your actual passport. Marjorie nodded politely, tucking his advice away with the other warnings she'd collected and dismissed. They didn't know Viktor like she did. They hadn't felt the connection in his words. The night before her departure, doubt crept in. Lying awake, she contemplated canceling. What did she really know about this man? What verification did she have beyond his words and a handful of photos? Her phone chimed with a message. Tomorrow, my Marjorie, your new life begins. I've waited my whole life to care for someone as special as you. Warmth replaced her fear. Viktor understood her in ways no one in Cedar Grove ever had. This wasn't recklessness, it was courage. After decades of predictability, wasn't she entitled to adventure? As dawn broke, Marjorie zipped her suitcase with steady hands. Her flight departed at noon. In 24 hours, she would finally embrace the man who had rekindled her belief in second chances. The taxi arrived precisely on schedule. Marjorie locked her front door without a backward glance. The heat hit Marjorie like a physical force as she stepped off the plane in Lagos. Sweat instantly beaded on her forehead while chaos erupted around her, hundreds of travelers pushing forward, airport personnel shouting instructions in accented English, vendors approaching with offers of assistance for small money. After retrieving her luggage, Marjorie scanned the crowd for the driver Viktor had promised. Instead, she spotted a man holding a sign with her name. It wasn't a driver, but Viktor himself, slightly thinner than his photos suggested, his hair more salt than pepper, but unmistakably the man whose words had captivated her. My Marjorie, he said, embracing her with a cologne-scented hug. Finally! The drive from the airport revealed a Lagos unlike anything she had imagined, sprawling, congested, with luxury high-rises standing adjacent to makeshift housing. Viktor pointed out landmarks with the confidence of a practiced tour guide. Tomorrow I'll show you my office, introduce you to colleagues, he said, patting her hand. Tonight you rest. The guest house wasn't on a company compound as described, but rather an apartment in a modest building with peeling paint and intermittent electricity. Viktor dismissed her confused expression. Temporary accommodations, he explained. My regular place is being renovated. More comfortable than it looks. That first evening, Viktor was attentiveness personified, ordering food, adjusting the small fan to cool her, asking about her flight. Yet something felt off in his movements, a mechanical quality to his affection, eyes that calculated rather than connected. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of controlled experiences. Viktor showed her local markets, a museum, a beachfront restaurant. Each location seemed carefully selected, their interactions with locals brief and supervised. Best not to wander, he cautioned when she expressed interest in a shop across the street. Lagos can be dangerous for foreigners. On the third day, while visiting a cultural center, Marjorie excused herself to use the restroom. A young Nigerian woman at the sink gave her a curious look. You are with the man in the blue shirt? She asked, her voice low. Yes, my friend Viktor, Marjorie replied proudly. The woman's expression shifted. That man comes here often. Always with different American women. Before Marjorie could respond, the bathroom door opened. Viktor stood there, his smile tight. I was worried, he said, taking her elbow with firm fingers. You shouldn't disappear like that. The change in Viktor's demeanor began subtly on the fourth day. His morning greeting lacked warmth, his questions about her comfort seemed perfunctory. When Marjorie suggested calling her sister, Viktor frowned. International calls are expensive here, he said. Use my phone to send a quick email instead. He stood nearby as she typed, glancing over her shoulder. Marjorie found herself editing her message, removing mentions of the apartment's condition, keeping her note brief and positive. That afternoon, Viktor announced they needed to relocate to a more private accommodation outside the city. The company needs this apartment for another engineer, he explained. I found us a charming place. More romantic. The new location was a small house in an isolated area, a 40-minute drive from central Lagos. No neighbors within shouting distance. No public transportation visible. Your passport should be secured, Viktor said that evening, hand extended. Lagos has professional thieves who target foreigners. I have a safe. When Marjorie hesitated, his expression hardened momentarily before softening into concern. You don't trust me? After all we've shared? Guilt flooded her as she handed over her passport, watching it disappear into his briefcase. The fifth day brought a noticeable shift. Viktor received a work call that left him irritable. He questioned Marjorie about her finances, retirement accounts, home equity, savings. I'm calculating our future, he explained. Two can live cheaper than one, but we must be practical. His tone suggested disappointment at her modest assets. When she mentioned needing to maintain her own financial independence, Viktor launched into a lecture about traditional relationships and trust. American women, he scoffed. Always suspecting men of ulterior motives. That night, Marjorie woke to find Viktor scrolling through her phone. She pretended to sleep as he examined her banking app, her contacts, her text messages. By the sixth day, her anxiety had become a constant companion. Viktor now answered her phone when it rang, speaking for her to the hotel receptionist, the tour guide, even when her sister called. Marjorie is resting, he told Beth. The heat has been difficult for her. Attempts to establish boundaries were met with emotional manipulation. After everything I've done, you still don't appreciate me, he would say, voice wounded. Perhaps you should return to your empty house if my company disappoints you. Each time, Marjorie retreated, apologizing, rationalizing his behavior as cultural differences or stress from work. The Wi-Fi password changed daily. The house had no landline. The nearest neighbor was too far to reach without transportation, which Viktor controlled. Are you recognizing these warning signs? This pattern of isolation isn't random, it's calculated. Like this video right now if you've spotted at least 3 red flags in Viktor's behavior. Share it with someone who needs to understand how predators separate victims from safety networks. On the 7th day, Marjorie's bank called. Despite Viktor hovering nearby, she answered directly. Mrs. Peterson, we're confirming your authorization for a wire transfer of $45,000 to an account in Lagos? The world seemed to stop. I didn't authorize any transfer, she said, her voice barely audible. Viktor's face transformed, the mask of affection dissolving into cold calculation. He snatched the phone from her hand, ending the call with a swift movement. You shouldn't have done that, he said, his accent suddenly different, heavier, less refined. Who are you? Marjorie whispered. Not Viktor Andre, civil engineer, he replied with a mocking bow. My name is Joseph Adebayo. I'm what you Americans call a professional. The realization crashed over her. There was no engineering firm, no retirement plans, no shared future. Every word, every touch, every promise, all fabricated to gain her trust. Your bank is paranoid, but there are other ways, he said, advancing toward her. Call them back. Tell them you authorized the transfer. Or better yet, log into your account and do it now. When Marjorie refused, Joseph's demeanor shifted from controlled to menacing. You have a house worth $230,000. Retirement accounts totaling $380,000. You will sign them over to me. His voice remained eerily calm. Many women before you have made the wise choice. Others. Marjorie's mind raced. The woman at the cultural center hadn't been mistaken. You think you're special? Joseph laughed. Your merchandise. Your loneliness made you easy. When Marjorie attempted to reach the door, the first blow caught her across the face, precise, practiced. The second knocked her to the floor. Your choices determine what happens next, he said, standing over her. Pain or cooperation? The violence escalated methodically. Joseph knew exactly how much force to use. Enough to terrorize without leaving evidence that couldn't be explained away. Enough to demonstrate power without rendering her unable to access her accounts. Something primitive awakened in Marjorie as his hands closed around her throat. Not fear, she'd moved beyond fear, but clarity. A sudden, crystalline understanding that submission wouldn't save her. Cooperation wouldn't ensure her safety. This man had no intention of letting her return home with knowledge of his operation. When Joseph dragged her toward the laptop, demanding her banking passwords, Marjorie appeared broken. Compliant. Her fingers trembled as she typed, not her password, but a banking security phrase that would flag her account for suspected fraud and alert authorities. The beating that followed left Marjorie drifting in and out of consciousness. Blood pooled beneath her head as Joseph raged about account freezes and security protocols. Through swollen eyes, she watched him pack his belongings, cursing her worthlessness. "I'll return with colleagues who are less gentle than me," he threatened from the doorway. "Reconsider your stubbornness." The door slammed. Locks engaged from the outside. Marjorie counted to 100 before attempting to move. Pain radiated through every movement as Marjorie crawled toward the bathroom. Joseph had taken her phone, but had overlooked something crucial, the small travel tablet tucked inside her toiletry bag. Battery, 18%. With shaking hands, she connected to the house's Wi-Fi. Joseph hadn't changed the password before leaving. No email access, but Facebook opened. Through the messaging system, she contacted Beth. Emergency. Held captive near Lagos. Call U.S. Embassy now. GPS on. While waiting, Marjorie assessed her injuries. Ribs that screamed with each breath. Eye swollen shut. Lacerations across her back. A missing tooth. Each wound a marker of the nightmare unfolding. 3 hours passed before the pounding on the door began. Nigerian police, accompanied by a U.S. consular officer named Michael. "Mrs. Peterson? Can you hear me? We're here to help." The journey to the hospital passed in fragmented moments. Officers speaking rapidly in languages she couldn't understand. Michael's steady voice translating, reassuring. The flash of emergency lights. Forms thrust before her, incomprehensible medical terms. "I'll stay with you," Michael promised, his government badge a beacon of safety amid chaos. The Lagos University teaching hospital staff moved with efficient precision, despite communication challenges. X-rays confirmed 3 broken ribs, a fractured orbital socket, concussion. As medical terms flew around her in accented English, Marjorie focused on a single thought: "I'm alive." The embassy arranged security outside her hospital room. Michael explained the process ahead: police statements, medical documentation, emergency passport issuance. Words that should have provided comfort but instead highlighted the mountain she still had to climb. "Joseph Adebayo is known to authorities," Michael explained gently. "You're not his first victim, but you may be one of the few to escape." That night, alone except for the guard outside, the full weight descended. Not just physical pain, but the psychological avalanche. Shame, violation, betrayal. How had she, a practical woman who'd navigated life's hardships, fallen for such manipulation? The 14-hour flight from Lagos to Chicago became an endurance test in itself. Every turbulent moment sent pain shooting through Marjorie's broken ribs. Each glance from fellow passengers at her bruised face intensified her humiliation. The embassy-arranged medical escort maintained a respectful distance, close enough for assistance, far enough for dignity. When the plane touched down on American soil, Marjorie wept. Not from relief, but from the crushing reality that returning home didn't erase what had happened. Beth waited at arrivals, her face collapsing at the sight of her sister's injuries. The 3-hour drive to Cedar Grove passed mostly in silence, words inadequate against the magnitude of the experience. News traveled quickly in small towns. By evening, Marjorie's porch held casserole dishes and flower arrangements, community currency for sympathy. What neighbors couldn't offer were the right words. Their awkward inquiries and pitying glances only reinforced her isolation. "You couldn't have known," they would say, or worse, "at least you're alive." Sleep became Marjorie's enemy. Nightmares replayed Joseph's transformation from charming suitor to violent predator. Daytime brought flashbacks triggered by unpredictable stimuli, a cologne similar to his, a door closing too loudly, a man with a similar silhouette at the grocery store. Dr. Levine, the only psychiatrist within 30 miles, diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. Your brain is trying to process extreme danger, she explained. Your nervous system remains on high alert, even in safety. The twice-weekly therapy sessions began with Marjorie barely able to speak about Nigeria. Progress came in microscopic increments. A full night's sleep, a trip to the mailbox without scanning for threats, answering her phone without panic. Most difficult was confronting the shame. Not just from the violence, but from her perceived complicity. I should have known better, she repeated in therapy. I'm educated. I raised children. How could I fall for this? Manipulation isn't about intelligence, Dr. Levine would counter. It's about exploiting basic human needs, connection, purpose, hope. The most sophisticated security systems can be breached by someone who has the right access codes. Joseph studied what you needed and became exactly that. Healing wouldn't come from forgetting, but from reclaiming her story. 3 weeks after Marjorie's return, Special Agent Diana Walker from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center arrived in Cedar Grove. Her presence underscored the severity of the case. Most romance scams received only digital attention, not in-person federal resources. International fraud cases are complex, Agent Walker explained in Marjorie's living room. Nigerian authorities are cooperating, but jurisdiction issues complicate prosecution. The man Marjorie knew as Victor Andre, then Joseph Adebayo, was actually Emeka Okafor, a 41-year-old former bank employee with a network spanning 3 continents. His operation targeted not just Americans but Canadians, Australians, and Europeans. The profile photos Marjorie had fallen for belonged to a retired French businessman who had no idea his image fueled criminal enterprises. We've tracked at least 28 aliases, Agent Walker said, spreading photos across the coffee table. Each showed Emeka with different women, some smiling in tourist locations, others looking uncomfortable in similar settings where Marjorie had been photographed. The criminal complaint against Emeka included accusations of fraud, assault, extortion, and human trafficking. His capture at the Nigerian-Benin border came not through Marjorie's case alone, but from a coordinated effort triggered by her banking alert combined with similar reports. When Marjorie's story appeared in the Cedar Grove Gazette, the FBI hotline received 17 calls from women across 3 states. Each described nearly identical experiences, online romances with Viktor that ended in financial loss, though most escaped the physical violence Marjorie endured. Their collective testimony built a case that individual complaints might never have achieved. The legal proceedings stretched across months of depositions, video testimony, and evidence authentication. Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission pursued charges locally while American prosecutors built parallel cases for extradition. The challenge isn't proving he committed crimes, Agent Walker cautioned during their 4th meeting. It's creating consequences meaningful enough to disrupt the entire network. Even with Emeka in custody, his operation continued under lieutenants managing dozens of romance profiles. For every account suspended, 3 more emerged. 8 months after her attack, Marjorie received notification. Emeka had been sentenced to 12 years in Nigerian prison for fraud and assault, with additional American charges pending. The financial recovery was less successful. Only $8,000 of her losses were recovered, the rest having disappeared into untraceable accounts. Justice had arrived, but in a form that felt incomplete against the magnitude of the harm. In retrospect, the red flags in Viktor's behavior formed a clear pattern that experts recognize as textbook romance fraud. First, the rapid emotional intensity. Viktor accelerated intimacy through constant communication and declarations of deep connection within weeks of meeting online. This love bombing technique creates emotional dependency before critical thinking can engage. Second, his consistent unavailability for video calls despite regular text and voice communication. Romance scammers avoid live video where inconsistencies in their identity become apparent. Third, the carefully constructed backstory, too perfect, too aligned with Marjorie's interests, and conveniently unverifiable due to international distance. These operators research their targets extensively, explains cybersecurity psychologist Dr. Helen Ramos. They identify emotional needs, loneliness, desire for adventure, fear of aging alone, and customize their approach accordingly. Predators select victims through social media activity that reveals vulnerability, recent loss mentions, relationship status changes, and isolation indicators in posts. Age demographics matter too. Older adults often combine financial stability with less digital skepticism. Before meeting anyone from online platforms, experts recommend these verification steps. Insist on video calls from multiple locations and times of day. Reverse image search profile pictures using Google or TinEye. Research their claimed employment history on LinkedIn and industry websites. Request specific verification, photo holding today's newspaper or specific gesture. Never travel internationally for first meetings. Suggest neutral, public locations in your country. Resources for protection include the FBI's IC3, Internet Crime Complaint Center, for reporting suspicious profiles. Romance Scams Now, a nonprofit with scammer detection tools. Professional background check services with international capabilities. AARP's Fraud Resource Center with senior-specific guidance. The most effective protection isn't technological but psychological, notes FBI analyst Kevin Bright. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, and verify independently what can't be proven directly. 2 years after her ordeal, Marjorie Peterson sits at her kitchen table in Cedar Grove, corresponding with women across the country. Not through dating sites, but through a support network she established for romance scam survivors. Healing began when I stopped hiding my experience, she explains, sorting through letters from women seeking guidance. Shame thrives in isolation. Her modest website, Truth After Trust, receives hundreds of visits daily. The community she's built provides both emotional support and practical assistance, helping victims navigate reporting procedures, recovery resources, and the complex emotions following betrayal. Marjorie still lives alone, but isolation has been replaced with purpose. Her home hosts monthly support meetings. Her calendar includes speaking engagements at senior centers and community colleges. I didn't choose what happened to me, she says, but I can choose what happens next. The impact extends beyond individual survivors. Banks in 3 states have implemented training programs based on Marjorie's case, helping staff identify potential romance scam withdrawals. Cedar Grove's police department now includes digital safety in their community outreach programs. The societal cost of romance scams extends beyond financial losses. Victims often face depression, anxiety, and profound trust issues that ripple through families and communities. Many never report their experiences due to embarrassment. Protection isn't about fear or suspicion, Marjorie emphasizes. It's about verification before vulnerability. Love that's genuine can withstand questions. For those watching who recognize themselves or loved ones in this story, remember, compassion, not judgment, helps survivors rebuild. Connection heals what connection betrayed. This story matters. Your attention matters. Hit subscribe to join our community dedicated to preventing these crimes through awareness. Like this video to help our algorithm reach those who need this warning most. Most importantly, share it, because the next Marjorie deserves a different ending.